My first time going to prison.
Yeah, very first time.
Okay. I ain't gonna lie, I was scared. I had been getting locked up since I was a juvenile, so I knew inevitably I was going to end up in prison. I didn't want to go; it was like my biggest nightmare, but I knew that I was going to end up there. And when that day finally came, and I was on that bus, I was like, my friend, he even that I was riding with, he was like, man, we're gonna be all right, man. We'll just stick together, me and you. And I was like, all right, cool.
Is that you come before the judge and they see someone who's 17, 18, 16, tried as an adult, and, it's their grace. And they want to offer programs. They want to offer, they really want to believe that someone just made a mistake. They're young, you know what I mean? So they want to try to let them make it. And so, like I said, 16, caught the charges. I did 6 months in a rehab, an inpatient rehab, 6 months for cognitive behavior therapy. Pretty much they say the way my thinking behaviors and all that, try to get that in order. But that didn't really do nothing. I stayed there for 6 months, got out, went back to the same thing, picked up more charges, and, spent time in county waiting. They even offered me probation before that, a 10-year probation. And they fake a fire alarm. They set off all the fire alarms, and, they come on the intercom, we got a fire, this, that. And so the guard pops everyone else's cell and let everyone run out and everything except for mine. And so I'm sitting there like, I'm like, man, no way. Like, no way this is happening, man. I just get to my cell, and I'm like, I guess I'm going to burn. You know what I mean? Like, dang, you're going to burn one way or the other. And he lets everyone out. I'm there kind of banging on the door like, hey, yo, yo, yo. And the guard comes laughing. He's like, nah, I'm just kidding, man. There's no fire. And everyone get back to their cell. Yeah, bro. So the guards were horrible, man. They were horrible to everyone. And so that was the first second I stepped in. The first night, I wake up in the middle of the night. The guard popped the cell open. He let 4 or 5 dudes. I don't know, 4, 5, 6. I don't remember how many it was. It was a lot of fists. But he opens the door, and he lets them in, and they walk in, right? And so I pop up off the bed real quick. You ask my wife, man, when I wake up, I'm like that. I get straight to my feet. And so I hear the door open. I'm straight to my feet. I'm already standing. And I'm there, and I'm just looking at them. And they're like, hey, when they come pass out food, like, you're not going to eat. Like, you can send your tray.
The environment and the cells and the food and the structure was kind of groomed for it already. Like you said, I did 8 years on a 12-year sentence, but total, I maybe got close to 10 years total of my life that I've been incarcerated. So when I finally got to the county jail on this particular sentence, I knew I was going to do some time. So the mentality that I had was real just corrupted and warped. I used to see dudes my age, and they'd be crying on the phone, trying to call their mom. I would make fun of these dudes and, sort of like the bully, because it was like, dude, we're all in the same situation, so, get with the program, So I got involved in the gangs, too, started hanging around with the older homes, and I didn't make it long in population because the fighting, and so the whole... And I guess I'll go into it more in detail with my testimony, but the whole Mexican mafia or the home stuff is, it's real prominent in the Bexar County Jail. So it's sort of like a prize to each of these gangs to catch each other, And as a young dude, I wanted to be known as like, I got me some, And
I didn't want to kill myself. Deep down, I really didn't. I wanted to, but deep down, I really didn't, because I knew there was something, there had to be something better. There had to be something more. So it was that Bible that saved my life, and it changed my life because I took it in. I put it on my heart, and I took it in, and man, it's the best thing that I ever could have done.
So it was about 5 years in before God started drawing on my heart. Of course, he's been drawing me my whole life, and I've just been running. But I didn't go into the prison system seeking God. So I'm about 5 years in. I'm living outside, I'm stationed outside of Houston in a little small town called Woodville. And the population of the officers is all 18 to 21-year-old officers, so there's so many women there. And I had been getting caught up with everything going on. I had a girlfriend that was legally born a woman. It wasn't a prison girlfriend. So she was an officer. And, I started feeling like man, this is probably what I want. I want to come home to a wife, you know. I want to have some kids, and I started having this urge for a family. It was weird, man. I never thought about it before. I always felt like I was gonna end up dead. I've had personal friends that have been killed by officers in there. They put you in handcuffs. They take you to the back where there's no cameras. And one day, the next day, they're saying that he hung himself. But we knew this guy. You know, he was coming home in 3 months. He didn't hang himself. So that happens. I've seen overdoses it's actually crazy talking about it, because I just told my wife's son a few weeks or a month or so, like, you'd be surprised how many dead bodies I've seen in prison. And
they're just trying to brush his teeth. He's like, Jonathan, man, everyone. Is that the breakfast table, bro?
I'm just getting ready for church, bro. For real.
We're at dinner or something. So that's something I got to realize in this newer generation. It's a blessing that there's...
Like, get out, and then God gets involved. And so thank God for that. I ended up in that position, and everything fell apart like it always does, because you're not smarter, you're not better. You know what I mean? You're going to get caught. Like everybody else, and things are falling apart. And I'm getting to that point, you know, and I have that God moment, that crying out, and he gets involved. He saves me from that, and everything starts to fall in place. Everything begins to be restored. I'm glad God got involved, because I didn't have that fulfillment of the county, what I went into prison hoping to do. I didn't have that fulfillment, and so I was already prepared. I was thinking I'm gonna go back, and you know, the solution to that was like how Jonathan said. I was like, but this time I gotta go G4. Mm-hmm. You know, this time I gotta get the red jumpsuit if I want to make it to those prisons.
Welcome back to another episode of LifeSpeaksPodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We want to give a shout out to the Choosing Hope Foundation. Go to the website choosinghopefoundation.org. See what they're doing over there, man. Wrapped around prison ministries, just doing big things out there. Check it out if you want to donate, or if you just want to see, or if you just want to just check it out and see what can happen. Hey, just see it, see what can happen. Check out LifeSpeaksPodcast.com and be up on the info about our podcast. And thank you so much for watching. If you want to donate, you have an option on there. Next, the Potter's House, GRA.com with our church, the Universal Church in Universal City, Greater Randolph area, 2025 Universal City Boulevard. Come and check us out, see how God's moving. Let's check out the website. Once again, it's the Potter's House, GRA.com. And man, just see how God is just moving over there. And it is awesome. Like, subscribe to our podcast, ring the bell so you get all the notifications. And thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome back to the podcast. We have a very special table talk episode for you today. Today we're going to be discussing prison and going into an in-depth conversation about it. Today I'm joined by three special guests. A couple of them you know. One of them I'll introduce you to today. So first off, we have former host Casey. Casey
Favorite Tennessee representative. Back at it, y'all. What's up?
So Casey here did about 7 years total. First time he went in was 22 years old.
Yeah.
Second time he went in was 30 years old.
Yeah.
Third time was about 33.
Something like that.
Yeah. So he did 7 years total in prison. My next guest, Jesse. You know Jesse as well.
Yeah,
Jesse. So we got went into prison at age 18. Did 3 years. So I went in as a young kid. You've been out how long? You've only been out a few years, right? 3 years maybe? It's when we moved
Yeah,
here,
because
right?
it's going to be our 4th year anniversary coming up, so it'll probably be 4 years coming up.
Over 4 years.
Congrats, bro. Congrats.
And our next guest is new to the audience. This is Jonathan. Jonathan's one of our newest members in our church.
Yeah.
He just got released from prison in October after serving 8 years of a 12-year sentence. He went in at the age of 19. So obviously, you know, he's got a lot to share. And we're going to get into his personal testimony. after this, actually. So you'll get to.
And sorry
more about
if
it.
you saw me giggling. I wasn't giggling at Jonathan. I looked at Monty, and she's holding up 5 with a mean face. So I got that wrong, guys. I was like, please, God, let it have been 4. Oh, no. It was 5, so yeah.
Jesse's in
Wow,
trouble.
5.
So thank you guys for joining us. Okay, so before we get started into the conversation, just to kind of get the audience head wrapped around prison and stuff, I'm just going to share some quick stats. So right now, well, at the end of 2021, when this report came out, there was around 1.2 million prisoners in prison. The imprisonment rates per 100,000 people for that group of people are as follows. So 1,186,000 per 100,000 blacks. They're the highest. 1,004 per 100,000 for American Indian, which I thought was kind of surprising. It's pretty high. 619 per 100,000 for Hispanic, and 222 per 100,000 for white. So that's so just to kind of explain. So the imprisonment rates, they're looking at that group specifically. So like American Indian, they have a low population within the U.S., but they have a higher percentage of them are going to prison more than whites. Even though more white people are in prison, the percentage is there's more percentage of Indians and white. So as far as the population of people imprisoned at this time, blacks are 32% of the population in prison. Whites are 31%. Hispanic is 24%. American Indian, 2%. Of the people in prison, 157,000 are in there for murder. In the federal prison, 47% in federal prison are serving time for drug offenses. And females represent about 7% total prison population. There's about 1,566 state prisons, 98 federal prisons, 3,116 local jails, and around 1,323 juvenile correctional facilities. So I just want to kind of throw that out there.
That's nationwide?
It's nationwide.
Whoa.
So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there just to kind of get into, the mindset of prison and stuff. I mean, 1.2 million, that's a lot of prisoners. So first off, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to kind of break it down into categories. I have some questions. I have some stats that we're going to go into. So it's going to be less of a testimony from their part. I'll put their individual testimonies in the description below. Casey and Jesse have already shared their experience and stuff. So I don't want to go too much into that and just kind of rehash that. I want to kind of get their perspective and their opinion on things because they have gone through the system and whatnot. So the first kind of subject, the first segment that we're going to be talking about is mind, body, and spirit. So we're going to be talking about the experiences of what it does to you, what it does to your mind, what it does to you physically, what it does to you spiritually. So, first off, to get into it, let's just go through and just tell us your guys' experience from first being arrested, going through the trial, going through the first day of prison. Just talk about like what the emotions you had, the thoughts that were going through your head at those moments. Just walk us through that experience, right? Because we don't experience that. Obviously, for somebody like you, Jonathan, who was facing 12 years, I mean, you can, at such a young age, I'm sure you're probably going through that experience like, man, my life is over. This is it. You know what I mean? And also from your guys' perspective, you two, since you guys were arrested and put in prison at such a young age. So another stat is less than 1% of people going into prison are 18 to 19-year-olds. So you two fall into that 1%. So, most people going into prison are older. So being such a young age, going into prison, like what was that experience like? Walking into the prison, you're getting off the bus and walking in and seeing the whole experience, going through the whole, we were joking about it, the turn your head and cough stuff, you know what I mean? They check you out before you get you in there. You're all naked with all these guys. So just kind of walk us through, your whole experience of the emotions and thoughts and all that stuff. And And again, for you guys, being such a young kid, did you have that fear? Did you have, knowing that you guys are kind of on the bottom of the totem pole in this thing? Was there anything there? You know what I mean? So yeah, we'll start with that. So go ahead, Casey. We'll start with you.
My first time going to prison.
Yeah, very first time.
Okay. I ain't gonna lie, I was scared. I had been getting locked up since I was a juvenile, so I knew inevitably I was going to end up in prison. I didn't want to go; it was like my biggest nightmare, but I knew that I was going to end up there. And when that day finally came, and I was on that bus, I was like, my friend, he even that I was riding with, he was like, man, we're gonna be all right. We're gonna be all right, man. We'll just stick together, me and you. And I was like, all right, cool.
Real quick. So the first time you got locked up was for drugs or for the alcohol?
My very first time getting locked up?
Yeah.
When I was a juvenile? No, that was...
Oh, when you're... So...
No, my prison, when I went to prison, yeah, that was for drugs.
Okay, let's talk about the prison.
Okay. When I was... Yeah, that's when I was on the
drugs.
chain. Yeah, when I was on the chain, me and my friend, it was for a drug charge. I got 3 cocaine charges and a ecstasy charge. And I got an 8-year sentence for that, and I ended up doing half of it. But that was for my own stupidity. I could have got out in like a year and a half, but I was just in there wilding. But anyways, on that first trip, me and my friend, we were sitting next to each other, and he was like, man, we're going to look out for each other, man. And I was like, yeah, all right, cool, So that kind of gave me a sense of relief. But whenever, we're going through classification and stuff. Well, as soon as you get in, you wanted to talk about that. I mean, you're in like a 6x6. That's how it was in Tennessee. You're in like a 6x6, and they strip you all down butt naked. And, we're all just in there. You got like, in a 6x6, you got like probably 12, as many dudes as they can cram in there, and we're all butt naked, and we're all just like this. You know what I'm saying? And, we're just sitting there, and we're just sitting there talking to each other. Everybody's just talking to each other. Man, the dude's right here, he's butt naked, and when you just having a normal conversation with him, it's just like, and I ain't never been through anything like that, even as a juvenile, and I was just like, dang, for real, what did I get my freaking self into, man?
That's why shy poopers make me laugh, bro. People are like shy about that stuff. So, bro, I'll look you right in the eye, bro. Eat an ice cream cone.
What up, bro, man? You back at it again, ain't you? But I mean, it's just that's the life that hey, if you're gonna do the crime, you gotta pay the time, and that's just the life that I was living, So I had to be expecting it, And after that, you get classified and all that, and they give you clothes, they give you your blanket and all that, and they give you a mat, and then you go to wherever you're assigned to. And I was in there, and my friend, I got lucky. He was with me. He ended up being in the same building that I was at, and before you even so we got to hang out for a little bit, but like 2 weeks or so that you're in there, you got to go talk to I can't even remember what it's called, but it's like they're gonna assess you and then send you wherever they want to send you. And in Tennessee, wherever they got beds, they'll be like, okay, we got beds here, we got beds here, we got beds here. Which one do you want to go to? And when you're in prison, you already know the reputations of each facility. So you'll be like, oh man, they wilding over here at Northwest. I don't want to go to Northwest. They over here at Attorney Center. I don't want to go to Attorney Center because, man, they just straight killing and stuff over there. So I don't want to go over there. So you want to pick the least one. But my friend, he was like, man, we're gonna stick together, ooh. And he was like, man, we can go to Northwest, and me and you, we're gonna be cool. Well, at that time, Northwest was probably one of the worst prisons in Tennessee. And me listening to my freaking friend, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna choose Northwest. And he was like, yeah, me too. We'll just go over there and we'll just look out for each other. He didn't even choose Northwest. I chose Northwest. And I ended up going to freaking Northwest. And that's like 45 minutes north of Memphis.
Wow, he left you hanging.
Yeah, he left me hanging. And it's wild over there in Memphis. And 3/4 of the population was from Memphis. So I was pretty much in Memphis. And I just had to deal with it, And when I finally got there, I remember I don't know if I should say this, but you can edit it out if you want. I remember as soon as I got to the dorm, I seen this punk walking down the stairs, and it looked just like a girl. And I was looking, I was like, I was just shocked because I think that was the first time I ever seen something like that. And I was just looking, and I was just like, I knew it was a dude because they had prison clothes on, and I was just looking. And my other friend that I was with, he actually ended up. I had another friend. He went to Northwest too, and he was elbowing me. He was like, hey, quit. He was like, stop looking, bro, stop looking. And I was just kind of stuck for a second because I was just in disbelief, and he was telling me, so I just, I kind of just shook it off and stuff like that. But it was just I was just green. I didn't know. That's just a figure of speech, what they say. You're just not used to anything like that.
So you being in Memphis, did they treat you different knowing that you weren't from that area?
No, they treat everybody different. Yeah. They treat everybody different. They just don't care over there. They wild.
Yeah.
They'll kill you in broad daylight over there in Memphis.
So when you first got in there, then how did you handle yourself those first couple days, first week?
Mentally or just in general?
Just in general. I mean, with all the new meat coming in, I mean, do they mess with you or do they just kind of leave you alone? And
yeah, that's kind of inevitable, especially if you go somewhere. But it all depends on how you carry yourself. I didn't know it at that time. I didn't carry myself like that, so nobody really messed with me like that. I seen where some guys were messed with like that. I was a fighter out there on the streets, so you mix that with the fear that I had in me. I wasn't really a flight person. I was a fight person. So I'm gonna fight, and that's what I did. I thank God that I didn't get killed over it, but
did you get into a lot of fights?
I got into a few. I wouldn't say a lot, but I probably got into like that whole 4 years I was there, maybe like 5, maybe 6. I don't know. That might be a lot to some people, but to me, that's not really. That's not a lot. I remember. I remember this one dude. He stole my deodorant, and I didn't want to be looked at as because I guess you can kind of compare it to high school. Everybody knows your business, and everybody's all up in your business. So if this dude stole my deodorant, they're gonna be like, "Oh man, we can get whatever we can off of this freaking dude. He ain't gonna do nothing." So I smoked a lot of weed then, and he tried to sell me some weed with the deodorant he just stole from me. So and I ended up telling my cellie about it. He was like, his name was Tank. He was like, "Yeah, Tank. They said Tank was over here walking around the cell. I know it was him that came in here." And come to find out, it was him that went in there and got it. And anyway, a long story short, I ain't going to drag it out. We ended up going. I told him, I was like, meet me in the cell, and I'll get that weed off of you. And we got in there, and as soon as he came in there, I told him to shut the door. And whenever he shut the door and he turned around, I just hit him. Bah! But I ain't gonna lie, I was scared. I was green. And you mix that with all the stuff that I was already going through, considering I was finally in prison, it just amplifies everything. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't know what to do after that. I just froze. So I was stuck. So I hit him, and I hit him pretty good. And I was just looking at him, and then he just came at me, and then we just went at it. Bloop, 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 bloop. We was all over the floor, and freaking... I ended up busting his nose. He ran out. His nose was all bloody and stuff, and he got me in my cheek. My cheek was all fat, and my cellie finally came in there, and he broke us up, and he was like, "Get out of my cell." And after that, people just look at you differently, because if you stand up for yourself, they know to be like a lot of people in prison. They want what they can take. They want
Easy,
something
what they can
easy.
take easy, yeah.
Yeah. They don't want to have to work for anything, you know, because think about a lot of people that's in prison. They're in there for robbery. They're in there for, you know, this and that, selling drugs and stuff. They don't want to work for anything. You know what I'm saying? They just want to take it.
Yeah, easy.
So if you put that target on your back like that, then that's what they're going to go for, you know?
Yeah.
And I just wasn't like that. I wasn't like that on the streets. And I just, I guess subconsciously, I took it with me into prison, you know? So.
Okay. So I do have more questions, but this first part of just kind of summing up your experience, we'll just go next to Jesse, and then we'll come back to some other questions.
Yeah, so kind of following, you know, the same line what Case was saying. So going in, like I said, 18. When I got arrested, I was 17. And so that time in county, and that time that it took to get to prison, I was a teenager. I was probably about 16 when I caught the charges, you know, and spent time in county at 17 because I caught the charges, and, you know, they try to let me make it, right? I think that's why that percent is so low, is that you come before the judge and they see someone who's 17, 18, 16, you know, tried as an adult, and, you know, it's their grace. And they want to offer programs. They want to offer, you know, they really want to believe that someone just made a mistake. They're young, you know what I mean? So they want to try to make it, try to let them make it. And so, like I said, 16, caught the charges. I did 6 months in a rehab, an inpatient rehab, 6 months for cognitive behavior therapy. Pretty much they say the way my thinking behaviors and all that, I try to get that in order. But that didn't really do nothing. You know, I stayed there for 6 months, got out, went back to the same thing, you know, picked up more charges, and, you know, spent time in county waiting. They even offered me probation before that, a 10-year probation. And couldn't make it on probation either, couldn't put down the dope, couldn't stop, you know, going out and catching more cases. And so that's when, you know, I went back before the judge. At this point, I was already, you know, 17, 18. And the judge was like, you know, they tried to let me make it again. Was like, okay, well, let me put you back on probation. You know, we could try another program. At that point, man, I was so sick and tired of dealing with this stuff. I already knew nothing was going to change. I knew the life I wanted to live. And I was like, man, give me 5 years in prison. I told the Lord. She was like, you know, we can get you back on probation. We do this, that. I said, nah, give me 5 years in prison, and I'll take that. I'll be happy with that, because with that, the type of probation I was on, technically what it is if you can't complete it, right, they'll give you probation, but the deal is if you can't complete it, then they're going to give you the time that you sign up for probation, so they can give you 10 years. And so I was like, man, 10 years. And so I remember, like I say when we do our little witness, the day that my grandma discharged her parole, they revoked my probation. You know what I mean? And that's when the green warrant went out, or the blue warrant, right? Blue warrant? Mm-hmm. Blue warrant went out. And so that's pretty much like, okay, we got to get this guy. They came deep, too, when they came and got me. They came, 5, 6 cars, guns drawn, come to the workplace, came through the back door kind of thing, caught me by surprise, came out of nowhere. And so, yeah, I told the judge or the lawyer, I said, man, give me 5 years. If you can give me 5 years, I'll be happy with that. I said, but I'm not going to do paper, man. Just send me to prison. And my grandma encouraged it, too. She's like, mijo, just take your time. Just take your time. You know, it'll go by fast. I said, all right, grandma. So the judge, the lawyer got me 3 years. So I was even better. So I was in court, and I'm there in shackles. I was already locked up. They already caught me on the blue warrant. I'm there in my shackles and my oranges. And, 3 years. And so I'm there laughing, man. I'm there. Hysterical. I won, I took it as like a
W for
easy as a W. The dude next to me is like, man, why are you laughing, man? Like, what's going on? And I was like, man, they gave me 3 years. And he's like, you're going to prison? I said, yeah, man, for 3 years, bro. I was like, what do you, heck yeah, man, I got the W, man. Like, what do you, And so that was the mentality. You know what I mean? That was the mentality. That's the mentality I went in with. I was young. And so going in the county, and awaiting chain gang, right, to go through, stand with those naked dudes, like Casey was saying, getting stripped. I was already preparing for it, and so, and this is my take, personally. I feel like if anything, with the unit I was at and with Bexar County, I feel like Bexar County goes a lot harder than some of these prisons that we have around, these, not G4 prisons, right? Because they got the prisons out there. You act up, they're going to send you there. But most of my experience, most of my training came from the county, being 17 years old. I was telling someone about this yesterday. Being real young, it's just kind of because when you're 17, you're in a 17-year-old pod only with 17-year-olds. So it's just a bunch of rascals, just a bunch of kids, man, acting up. So I remember my first night. Really, honestly, the second I stepped into the county jail and into my cell, I stepped into the cell, and they fake a fire alarm. They set off all the fire alarms, and, they come on the intercom, we got a fire, this, that. And so the guard pops everyone else's cell and let everyone run out and everything except for mine. And so I'm sitting there like, I'm like, man, no way. Like, no way this is happening, man. I just get to my cell, and I'm like, I guess I'm going to burn. You know what I mean? Like, dang, you're going to burn one way or the other. And he lets everyone out. I'm there kind of banging on the door like, hey, yo, yo, yo. And the guard comes laughing. He's like, nah, I'm just kidding, man. There's no fire. And everyone get back to their cell. Yeah, bro. So the guards were horrible, man. They were horrible to everyone. And so that was the first second I stepped in. The first night, I wake up in the middle of the night. The guard popped the cell open. He left 4 or 5 dudes. I don't know, 4, 5, 6. I don't remember how many it was. It was a lot of fists. But he opens the door, and he lets them in, and they walk in, right? And so I pop up off the bed real quick. You ask my wife, man, when I wake up, I'm like that. I get straight to my feet. And so I hear the door open. I'm straight to my feet. I'm already standing. And I'm there, and I'm just looking at them. And they're like, hey, when they come pass out food, like, you're not going to eat. Like, you can send your tray. And, I was just half asleep. But I wasn't with that. I just said no. Hit one of them, got hit, whatever. Got jumped pretty much. But like Casey said, fought. I didn't go down easy, man. At that point, I had already been stabbed twice. I'd already been jumped. I'll go into a fight knowing I'll lose. It's not even about that at that point. But so that was the first encounter, first like really training. And this is what I expected it to be. I was like, man, this is what it's going to be. Like, man, this is going to be hard. But so be it. They left me alone and kind of turned. I aged out, went to the 18-year-old pod. It kind of flipped. I flipped the table on someone else, right? So the next guy came in. I did the same thing to him. So I had a guy where, his food was mine. And so he'd go around and he would eat the scraps off of other people, the food that they didn't want, their vegetables or cornbread, whatever he can get. And anything that he got that I wanted was just pretty much mine. And so it flipped, and it was like a sink or swim. And like I said, like, I don't drown. So I did it to the most that I could, already preparing for that. And looking back, there's not really another option, I guess. I don't know if I would change it. I think with the circumstances, that's all there was.
Well, prison is, it's a survival of the fittest, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you got to do what you got to do to survive there, right? So, yeah. So real quick, with your attitude of getting 3 years and thinking that was a win and stuff. So when you get to prison and you're going through, walking in, like, you're not worried about it. You're just kind of like, hey, I'm cool, man. I'll get through this, no problem.
No, I mean, I was terrified on the inside. I know on the bus and all that, the little chain gang bus. I was terrified on the inside. I was, trying to stop the shaking. Because, I mean, you can be big and bad, but, I mean, like I said, there's 5 or 6 dudes. Now you're stepping into a yard, where there's hundreds, thousands. And, I mean, what are you going to do with that? There's the odds are against you. If the word was out, then so be it. There's nothing you can really do. You're powerless. And it's funny because I would think back. I remember when I was young, I'd work out to this little photo, and it was like a dude on a pull-up bar. And it was like trained, like one day you'd have to fight off a prison yard rape. And I was a teenager, but I would be like, that's what I tried to work out. I'd be pumped up. And at the time, it wasn't like I saw myself going to prison, but it was just like that mentality. Even at the gym, I was like, oh, yeah, man, like, no matter what, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be strong. But I was still scared. You're 18 years old. You said the percentage. There wasn't many other 18-year-olds like me. And when there was, mentally, they weren't really at the same level of maturity. I saw a lot of dudes, crash. I try to help them out, but you can't really. There's nothing you can really tell them. And you try to tell them, they were just still young in their mind. And I don't think myself above people, but I wasn't no crash dummy. I could see and understood respect, and I knew certain things. I could take a step back and see how things were going to work, play it out, and, play the cards that I was dealt. And other guys, you just see them crash and burn. But
did they try messing with you because you were younger?
No, like I said, that was the 17-year-olds. Then I went to the adults, right? Because you turn 18, you go to the adults, and the adults. I noticed a lot of the older guys, and it's always been this way. Have always taken me under their wing, and so that became like a preparing thing. I remember, some things because I in the county, I was already going to prison. I was like, well, I'm gonna be Otohon, you know what I mean? I'm gonna join a gang, I'm gonna be in this gang, and I'm San Antonio, whatever. And I remember, certain family, like, well, we got Mexican mafia, family members in prison and this and that. Like, we can. So there was a dichotomy there. I've always been this thing, like, well, I'll make my own way, So I went that way, and I was like, well, I'm gonna ride with the older horns, and so I went that way, and so it became like the older guys that were either back on a warrant or got locked up again, and we were all gonna go back to prison. It became a thing of like, okay, certain things would need to be handled. Who wants to handle it? And my hand would go up, preparing. And so by the time I went to prison, I'd already spent a little while, almost a year, waiting to go. And I had already, talked to these people in the pods. It goes by, rank. People call shots for certain people, for certain sets or whatnot. So I got to the point where, I'd pass out trays and, it was a leadership role for the gang already, and because as people come and go, they leave, and so it's just up next, kind of like the door directors, right? So the next door director for the Auto Horns, whatever. And so I had amassed these letters, pretty much letters of recommendation, names, and stuff like that. So I was ready to go to my unit. They're like, all right, this dude's already, done some things. He's down. He's gonna be, down for the set. He's a good, he's a good member. You know what I mean? And so I had that with me. So I went in, kind of like. Scared still, or maybe anxiety. I wouldn't even call it fear, really. It was just kind of, I don't even want to say excitement. I just didn't know what to do with the feelings. There was like a shaking there, and it wasn't even all necessarily fear, but it was just like, man, this is real. Like, this is really gonna happen. I went in with the paperwork, and because I left county finally, and I was going to prison, and we go through in Corpus Christi. Garza West. I landed there, and that's your little transport unit before you go to your other unit. So I land there, and I mean, from that point on, it was your normal prison experience. I end up getting to my unit, and I don't want to go too much into your next point. I don't know, is that far enough for an intro, or you want me to keep going?
What are you gonna go into?
I guess the prison experience itself. More continued where it went from there. I mean, right now I just got to the unit.
Yeah, no, we'll get into that in a little bit.
Okay.
Just real quick, so for you to survive, did you link up with any of the groups, the gangs, or anything like that, like Jesse did, or were you flying solo?
My first time, close to my first year, I was solo. But in Tennessee, there's not a lot of Mexicans, and my last name, I'm half Mexican, So there's not a lot of Mexicans in Tennessee. So whenever they come they stick together, and they were respected because they were the quickest ones to stab you, and everybody knew that. Blacks didn't mess with them, white folks didn't mess with them. They just knew they wasn't gonna fight; they was gonna stab. And whenever I went through another situation, and because the white people approached me, and they was like, "Hey, you want to ride with us?" And I was like, "Nah." And it was like, "Well, man, we can look out for you." I was like, "I'm half Mexican. I can't ride with you anyway." Yeah. And I didn't want to anyway because I didn't agree with a lot of their bylaws, and more than half of them were junkies anyway. Okay. And I wasn't about that, but I did ride with the Mexicans. I wasn't affiliated with anything. We just stuck together. Yeah.
And they accepted you. They accepted you as being half.
Yeah, because and I learned a lot of my Spanish from them. That's where I started learning Spanish.
Poor half-breeds, right? Like the Blaxicans and all that. Like, what do you do with them, man? Black with the afro, fluent in Spanish.
Yeah.
You were Miklo in the prison?
Pretty much, yeah. I can go where you can't, bro.
That's funny. Okay. Jonathan, let's go ahead and talk about your experience.
I started doing time through the juvenile system, so as far as the environment and the cells and the food and the structure, I was kind of groomed for it already. like you said, I did 8 years on a 12-year sentence, but total, I maybe got close to 10 years total of my life that I've been incarcerated. So when I finally got to the county jail on this particular sentence, I knew I was going to do some time. So the mentality that I had was real just corrupted and warped. I used to see dudes my age, and they'd be crying on the phone, trying to call their mom. I would make fun of these dudes and, you know, sort of like the bully, because it was like, dude, we're all in the same situation, so, you know, get with the program, you know. So I got involved in the gangs too, started hanging around with the older homes, and I didn't make it long in population because the fighting, and so the whole, and I guess I'll go into it more in detail with my testimony, but the whole Mexican Mafia older home stuff is, you know, it's real prominent in the Bexar County Jail. So it's sort of like a prize to each of these gangs to catch each other, you know. And as a young dude, I wanted to be known as like, you know, I got me some, you know. And when you start getting your name put out there to the officers, and eventually the GIs are gonna come and talk to you and everything. Well, with me, it was no warning. I didn't ever really admit to being an older home in Bexar County Jail. Just one day during dinner, they brought the trays, and they brought a red jumper suit, a one piece to my door, and they said, after dinner, just pack your stuff. You're gonna go to administrative seg. Well, as far as I know, at that time in Texas, San Antonio is the only place where they have administrative seg for gang members.
So explain to the audience what that is.
So administrative seg would be 23 hours locked down. You have 1 hour to come out, and within this 1 hour, you have to take a shower, make your phone calls, fill out your commissary. You know, all this stuff has to be taken care of within that 1 hour. Well, the way it works with the 23-hour lockdown is it rotates. So you never have a set time when you're going to come out. And there's times where I'll come out at 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and, you know, ain't nobody going to answer your phone calls, especially when you're calling from jail. You know, it's something that, so a lot of times this time is just wasted. And so on this sentence, I went into county, like I said, it lasted maybe about a month in population. And I spent the rest of I did 11 and a half months in the county jail before I went to prison. So I did all this time in segregation. And I went through some dark times. And, you know, being in segregation, sometimes you get cellies that you have no choice. You got to push them out or be, you know, involved with somebody who's dirty and throwing up. And so, like the heroin addicts, when they come in, it's a bad situation because when they're breaking off this particular drug, it's dirty, you know, and they can't help it. So I had plenty of the situations where I didn't have no remorse. It's like, you're living in my cell, so you got to go. And a lot of times it results to fights. And that's where I got most of my fights at, was in segregation with each other, because we're all supposed to be homeboys, but when you put a bunch of dogs in a cage, eventually you're going to start fighting with each other. So that's where a lot of my fights come from. And like I said, I sat there going to court. I was facing 20 years for aggravated assault with deadly weapon. And at that time, I was really ready to sign for these 20 years because I wanted to get out the county jail, because being in seg it does something to your mind, and it's a depression that you go through. Everything's expensive in the county jail, so you know, people who don't really have money or support, it's a little tough, you know, trying to survive off these 3-day meals. And so you just have this attitude like, well, whatever, I'd rather be in prison, because you hear these stories how everything's better, you know, the food's better, commissary's cheaper. So you just totally forget about anything and everything else just to get to a better place. You know, I'm sure that happens in people's lives who haven't been in prison. You know, you compromise. So I'm facing these 20 years, and I only go to court 3 times my whole time. So the first time my lawyer's like, well, they're going to give you 20 years, but we can't sign today. So the second time they come back, they're like, we're going to give you 15 years, but I can't sign today. There's all these excuses. There was some type of election going on, so there was transfers going on. So finally, I went in, and I have a different lawyer, and she's telling me, well, I could get you 12 years. I was like, cool, because I already signed the last 2 times. You know, I would have signed on a 20 or a 15. So So I signed on the 12 years, and by this time I was already like what you would call institutionalized. I hadn't even been to prison yet. I already had this mentality like I'm gonna go to prison, I'm gonna put in work, I'm gonna fight, you know, I'm gonna have fun because I used to hear about the cell phones and the drugs, and you know, you hear about all these fairy tale fantasy stories where prison's not that bad. So being young, I psyched myself out to a point where I was looking forward to go to prison.
So when you finally got to prison, did you have a eye-opening experience, or?
So like they said the eye-opening experience was how they demoralize you that first day. So coming out of SEG, we're pretty much separated the whole time until the point where we get into the prison system. Then they throw us together. So you know, dudes are looking at us. I'm young. People feel like, oh, these dudes are gangsters or killers. Something's wrong with them because they're chained up by themselves. So we get there and they throw us all in there. And that day, for some reason, it was a lot of people who showed up. It was 3 buses full. And yeah, just standing in line out. It's not a vivid memory that I like to recall, but man, they had us there about 50 deep, 50 men, and just we're standing there about 7 in the morning, and we're all just naked, you know, no clothes. And we're standing there for about 10 minutes, just, you know, just naked, man. And so they get to the point where, you know, they doing the whole squat cough thing. And at that point, you can't cover yourself. You know, you're trying to move and scramble around. And so you're just exposed to just everybody else around you. So, yeah, that was coming into prison. That was about the worst thing that I experienced as far as up to that point. And
So how old were you when you actually went into prison? Were you that 19, or were you a little older?
yeah, so I turned 19 right before I went to prison, and by the time I got to prison, I was 20. I was about to be 20 years old. I got there in July, and I turned 20 like 2 weeks later.
Okay. So with your experience in juvie and all that stuff, I mean, you were kind of, like you said, you were bred for this. You were used to what was going on in the lifestyle. So for you, it didn't really faze you too much then?
Nah, yeah, I had a real warped mentality, man. I was looking forward to the whole prison thing. I wanted to get my little rank or whatever, anything I could get, man. The free tattoos. I wanted to get my spur, you know, because that's a symbol for the older homes in San Antonio. So I just wanted to get a tattoo showing that that I'm really about that life, you know. So
okay. Well, I don't want you to go too much into it because we'll get into it with your podcast, but also we're going to talk about when you kind of realized that was all garbage and you wanted to seek God and stuff. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So moving forward then, let's talk about at what point did you guys start to go stir crazy? Like when you start losing your mind. I mean, you're locked in a box, you're in a cage, you can't go out, you know, especially, you know, you being locked up in that SEG or whatever it was, 23 hours a day. I mean, it's hard to, you know, not go crazy from that. You know what I mean? And for you guys, you know, just being in this close, confined space, you know what I mean? Like, did you guys go through any moments of starting to lose your mind? Did it have any effects on you, on your body, spiritually? Did it break you? Like, were you guys just losing all hope at a certain point, or were you guys just like, it's fine, I'll get through it, no problem? You know what I mean?
yeah, I think I shared it with you the other day. There was one point I could honestly say I lost my mind, and you know, was able to come back. There was no hope, man. It was just all like, I felt like I was never coming home. Of course, you know, there's a lot to come in my testimony. There was other things playing to the fact that I had a mindset of never coming home. So when I got into, I got G4'd real quick into my sentence when I got to prison. Well, in the process, I went through another SEG experience, but this time it was more dirty. You're secluded. You're by yourself. Everything's just more secluded. And I remember the thoughts of suicide would come in, man. And that plays a lot of factors in places like SEG and G4, G5. You know, suicide's a big thing in prison.
Yeah, well, that's one of the stats I have. It's one of the stats I have for the next segment. Yeah, we'll talk about all that. But yeah, you guys, mentally, spiritually, did it break you? Did you guys struggle with that?
Oh, my mind's always been gone, bro.
It's always been gone.
He's still trying to
For me,
And you guys can ask questions to each other too. It doesn't have to just be me. Like,
okay. For me, I smoked a lot of weed when I was in prison. My first time, so I was pretty much that was just like my escape.
so that was your thing, was just to I'm
Yeah.
just gonna go through this high.
Yeah, I'm just gonna smoke weed, and I'm gonna make me a little bit of money, and I'm just gonna ride it out. Cause my mentality was, I'm just gonna flatten it, cause I want to walk out of here free, you know. So I pretty much the same mindset I had out there on the streets. I had it in there in the penitentiary too. My first time, so I just stayed high. But after a while, I did realize, you know, I became more aggressive than what I used to be. And it took a little bit to realize that, because people would, like, say I would get some shoes. I would get some shoes from somebody. I'd sell somebody some weed. I'd get some shoes. And I'd be wearing the shoes, and somebody'd be like, dang, look at them shoes, man. What size are those? And I'd be like, your size? You know, like, tell them, be like, and, they would take it as a joke, but I was being serious. You know, I'd be like, yeah, they're your size. Go ahead and try to take them. You know, that was what I was implying. And I think that for me, that's what that was.
Okay, kind of changed you a little bit.
Yeah, I started realizing, and be like, hey, man, I'm not the same as what I used to be.
So as far as, okay, I know we had talked about this before, but you know, your guys' experience with people in prison that were serving, 20 years to life. They did have no hope, right? Like we had talked about that one guy, right? But what are your guys' observations of people that are going to be there until they die, right? Do they have a different mentality about them? Is their spirit just off? Is there something wrong with them? People who have been in solitary confinement for so long, have you seen, like, are they crazy? I used to watch, when I was younger, I used to watch a lot of prison movies and shows and stuff, so like Oz and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they used to have characters that that were in solitary confinement for years and years, and they were just like mentally gone. Like they were, talking to imaginary people, and they were kind of just out of it. You know what I mean? Like, is that something you guys saw, or with these type of people? Like, what's your experience?
I would say that the nut cases are kind of limited. You have a lot of gentlemen like ourselves who come from tough backgrounds and they're tough-minded. Period. It's something about these dudes that when they embrace it, sometimes they're more happier than the average inmate who's coming home within the next few years. But one thing I'll never forget is how they all, like, I did a time on the maximum unit, so they have life without parole. These dudes are never coming home. And they always say, like, oh, when I come home, or, when I come home, I'm going to do this. And in your mind, you're thinking, like, bro, you're never coming home. But you don't want to say that to them unless you're cool. I've actually, so I had a phone call this morning from a buddy of mine that he's doing a lot of time. And I had to break it to him. And this was the second time I've done this with somebody. First time I was in a cell with this guy, they called him 300 because he was built like a Spartan. This dude was big. And so when I tell him he has 2 life sentences and 16 and 20, everything stacked on top of each other. He's never coming home. And he used to always wait for mail. He used to always wait on commissary and money. And I told him I just had to break it to him, man. This was a close friend of mine. I used to give him the word and read to him. I told him, bro, you just got to let go and embrace this is your life. Give up everything that you had in the world, bro, because it's not there no more. This is what you have right now, and you need to learn how to be happy with it. And I swear I thought the dude was going to kill me in my sleep. And, but when they embrace it, man, they're more happy than a lot of these dudes who are coming home.
So then there's some sort of aspect where these guys, they accept it, and it's like, okay, this is my life, so I'm just going to make the best of it.
That's not always necessarily a good thing, though. Like I had a cellie. I don't even know if I should say it on air. Like he ain't never going home. He had life without parole, and he started to accept it, and then
Turn gay.
do what you want to with
Nah,
that.
yeah. See, that's the wrong embracement,
Do what you want to with that.
and
I
it
mean,
happens.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the wrong embracement.
and he would say it too. It'd be like, well, considering the circumstance, and that's what he would say.
Yeah.
Those are his exact words.
That's his
So,
justification.
So I
Yeah.
guess that goes back to like, what are you really embracing? Are you embracing, love and the spirit of God? Or are you gonna embrace everything that goes on in prison? Because they could become full-blown drug addicts, and in prison there's an abundance of that. I'm sure we'll get into talking about that soon.
Okay.
But I have met some lifers that, they're some of the most peaceful people you will ever meet. You would never know that they probably killed like 6 people.
Yeah.
They're like, I've met some lifers that, hey, they tote the Bible around, very, very knowledgeable about it, and they actually apply it in prison.
Oh, wow.
So, and you would never know that they're never going home. They just made peace with it.
Okay, well, it's a good segment to my next question, which is, so Jonathan, you found God in prison. You started to make stands and choices in your life to serve God. I don't think you did, right?
Just like, nah.
Casey,
nah.
I think you started to towards the end, right?
I did my second trip.
Okay, so for you two, let's go ahead and talk about a little bit about how you guys found God in prison. What got you to that point to want to seek out God and something different?
For me, I was tired. This was on my second trip. I had DWI here in Texas, and this was my first time coming to a prison in Texas. And I didn't want to go through that experience again, because my first experience in prison, it wasn't a good one. So I didn't want to go through that again. I didn't want to stab anybody. That's what my biggest fear was, stabbing somebody and then not coming home, being there for the rest of my life. So that's when I got down and I was like, hey, I got to do something different, because the stuff I've been doing, it's not working. So I was praying when I was in jail waiting on the chain, and I was like, God, man, I want to read your word, but I don't understand it. I was like, will you help me to understand it? And I already said that in my podcast. I ended up coming up on that easy read version of Bible, and I read it, and God left me for that. And he answered my prayer with that Bible. And man, that Bible changed my life, because that's what I wanted. I wanted something different. And I would walk down the halls of these programs that I would go to, because I wanted to change that time. I really did. I didn't go in there with the same mentality that I had the first time that I went to prison. I went in with a different mentality, because I didn't want to kill myself. Deep down, I really didn't. I wanted to, but deep down, I really didn't, because I knew there was something, there had to be something better. There had to be something more. So it was that Bible that saved my life, and it changed my life, because I took it in. I put it on my heart, and I took it in, and man, it's the best thing that I ever could have done.
I'm going to have a follow-up, but let's hear Jonathan, what your experience was.
Yeah, with me, so it was about 5 years in before God started drawing on my heart. Of course, he's been drawing me my whole life, and I've just been running. But I didn't go into the prison system seeking God. So I'm about 5 years in. I'm living outside, I'm stationed outside of Houston in a little small town called Woodville. And the population of the officers is all 18 to 21-year-old officers, so there's so many women there. And I had been getting caught up with everything going on. I had a girlfriend that was legally born a woman. It wasn't a prison girlfriend. So she was an officer. And, I started feeling like, man, this is probably what I want. I want to come home to a wife, I want to have some kids. And I started having this urge for a family. It was weird, man. I never thought about it before. I always felt like I was going to end up dead before I had the opportunity. So at this point, I can honestly say I was having fun in prison. I had forgot about everything. I use the word psyched out because you go inside your mind and you convince yourself this is reality. So at this point, I believe I'm having fun, and I'm partying on drugs, staying up late because we're partying with meth, and there's an abundance of everything in there. So for some reason, I put on this station. It's called Air One, and God hits me tough through one song. I can't remember the song, but He gets me. I'm high. I have been up for days, and I'm waiting for the next shift to come because my girlfriend's coming, and my wife knows about this, so we're able to talk about it openly, So I'm waiting for her to come, and I cut my hair, did all the prison stuff, ironed my uniform,
Got them icy whites
with the starch on,
and creased up.
I got all these tear out cologne strips from magazines. I rub them on me.
Dude, man, he
So
said he good.
I'm a penitentiary player, I think. And
Go give her a drink.
That's going to be the title of your
Back
podcast. Penitentiary player.
penitentiary players. Yeah, so while I'm waiting for her to get here to shift, I pick up the Bible, man, for some reason. Well, prior to this, let me explain. I have been into all this philosophy and all this esoteric knowledge, and I'll get into that in my podcast, in my testimony. But so I start reading the Bible, and I go through the gospel, and I'm high on meth, so I read through this really fast, and it's speaking to me like, for some reason, it feels like it's a spiritual encounter, but mind you, I'm high. So I go through the gospel, and Jesus says that I could have everything. I could do all these things, including and more, So that really hits me like, what do you mean? I could have all this, but in a better circumstance, I could have the money, I could have my wife, and I could have it clean. So then I get into the book of Acts, man, and God kind of put it on my heart, this is what I want for you. This is the plan I have for you in my life. So this girl comes on shift, and over the next 2-3 weeks, I'm preaching the word to her. She's like, what do you mean you're over here telling me to bring you all these drugs, now you're trying to preach to me? She says, you're tripping. And I'm just like, man, I write her a letter, and I tell her I don't want anything to do with this no more. I want to come home. If you ain't with it, then whatever. And that's how I got in contact with my wife today. That's how God drew me. And in my last 3 years, I took a stand for God. Well, at this point, I was already known for being a drug dealer. I've been in 26 fights, man, that I could count on my hands. And a lot of them I lost. But I was known for fighting, and I was known for selling drugs. I was known for being a tough guy. Not just necessarily a tough guy, but not, So when it's time for me, like, hey, I'm done with this life. I don't want to be Odaho no more. Like, a lot of dudes were bitter about it, but the dudes who were bitter about it, you come to find out that out here in real life, they're really not nothing, man. So it was like, so when I decided, okay, Lord, I'm going to surrender to you, it actually got harder, man. My wife today, Naomi, I told her, okay, we're going to do this together. Take a stand, I'm going to surrender, and we'll see where God takes us. Well, let me tell you, within a week of me surrendering, I was in G5 segregation of surrendering. So it doesn't get easier, y'all.
So that actually leads me into my the next segment and my next question. So I want to go into the next segment is violence, death, and drugs in prison. Looking partly at, is it hard to serve God in prison? And how do you serve God in prison? When you're surrounded by sex, drugs, violence, corruption, gangs, you're surrounded by sin constantly, right? So how do you keep, a pure heart, a pure mind through all this? For a few stats, so 62% of people serving in state prison are for a violent offense. So, like you kind of mentioned about your spirit changed and you were aggressive. Well, everybody's aggressive, right? So it's just an aggressive environment, right? It seems like it's 62% for violent offenses. Everybody's violent and everybody's aggressive, right? So it's hard. I'm sure it's probably tough to kind of navigate and probably have to walk on eggshells, right? I'm sure people are real quick to blow up and start a fight or whatever. So in 2019, there was 4,234 deaths. Of those, 143 homicides, which seems a little low. So I don't know if that's, suppressing of some stats right? So it doesn't look like people are just
Brush
getting
it under
murdered.
the rug.
Suicide.
Yeah.
So 72,000 total deaths from 2001 to 2019. In 2019, 311 were suicides. So from 2001 to 2019, there's been a total of 4,500 suicides. 2019, there was 253 deaths related to drug and alcohol intoxication, which is up 611% from 2001. It's crazy because you look at the graph and you see a major rise in 2015 of deaths from drugs. Like, you know, the line is like this and then it goes boom, shoots up. And that's because it's fentanyl, meth, and synthetic marijuana, K2. Those things are, I guess, around 2015 is when those really started to become real popular. So it's kind of crazy that it shot up that much. So let's just talk a little bit about, from your two perspectives, about how do you serve God when you're surrounded by death, you're surrounded by violence, you're surrounded by drugs. For you, Jesse, since you weren't, you know, looking at serving God in there, you know, what was your experience with all this kind of stuff? Were you a part of this? Were you a part of drugs? Were you a part of the violence? If not, how did you avoid it? Did any of this stuff kind of open your eyes? Like, did you see anything that just opened your eyes? Like maybe the suicides, maybe the drug abuse, maybe people, you know, overdosing that just kind of like, dude, I'm staying away from
to kind
that.
of pick up from where I left off. So I get to that Garza West, that unit, right? And so I'm there, and you know, everything kind of the excitement or the anxiety of it is kind of already over. It's like, all right, same thing as jail, just bigger. And so that kind of chills out. And I don't even remember how long I was there. But I remember, you know, with my little file, right, like a new intern or college graduate, like, you know, I got my what's the name for you? Your all your references and all that. What is that called? Your you know, when you go for a new job, what is it called? Your resume. So I got like a little resume, knows people and all that. And so I'm like, well, you know, I'm from San Antonio. You know, I, you know, rode in the county, like a little ride along, like this is what I want to do, whatever. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. He's like, well, you know, here's a little transport unit. You'll get to your unit, and you know, you can talk to them there. But for, you know, now just chill. You'll be headed there soon. So I don't remember how long I was there. It wasn't long, couple months, if anything. And I get to my unit, and I end up at this little small unit, kind of towards Beeville, but in Cotulla. And I think pastor said they would go preach there. They'd go preach at Cotulla and Beeville and stuff. They're like,
Yeah, Mexico.
yeah. And so a little tiny unit off there. And I get there, and I mean, super small, little, I don't even know if it was private owned or what. I mean, it was state, but there's not really anyone there. I don't even remember the count of inmates. It was very, very small, and there wasn't really much going on. So I get there, and at this point, I kind of keep that information to myself. I don't really share it with anyone, and I'm just kind of scoping it out, right? Kind of looking around and seeing what's up, and you know, some people kind of would look down on it, kind of like, nah, you should go in there screaming who you are. But my mind was like, man, what if this is like a Mexican mafia unit? And I was like, and I just landed here, and I'm about to tell, you know, I'll be like, I'm the only one. You know what I mean? And so that'd be the end of me. And so I'm just kind of chill back, and I'm scoping it out. And for whatever reason, as days are kind of going, nothing ever really comes of it. I never bring it up. So like how he's talking about the spur, right? And so I was, you know, all hard in the county, you know, fighting people, jumping people. People took me under their wings, right? They'd pop cells. I'd go in and fight grown men. I'd have two homeboys behind me just kind of watching, you know what I mean? So they'd throw me in there like, yeah, get him. Like, you know, like just like a puppy or something over here bashing some dude in, and they're there just in case it got ugly or whatever.
You know you can't lose with them.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like a little cute thing. So I was ready, right? I'm like, I'm a killer, man. Let me in. And it just kind of flipped. It was I get to this unit. Nothing's really going on. It's a bunch of old dudes, a bunch of old men, like old senior citizen guys, like real old guys, chill unit. And I'm there. And so nothing really ever comes of it. And kind of talk on the second point. I mean, what I really get into is, you know, like they say in songs, right? Exercise, read a book, keep your soul. And I begin meditating. I've always meditated, but I begin furthering, you know, hours of meditation. and books, autobiographies, books, even something you're not supposed to have, like you said, esoteric, third eye. And I'd already, involved myself in the LSD and the DMT and the shrooms and the spiritual. I'd already seen some things, experienced some things at that point before even going in. So I began exercising. I began reading books, got my GED. I was valedictorian. There in Beeville, right? I was a valedictorian, so I was the top student. And the trend follows. I'm doing the same thing, out here. But I began on that really, and so nothing ever came of that. So as far as like the super hard murder and stuff, it was still prison, right? So things still happen. There was still drugs. To get into your third point about the drugs, I would still do drugs, pop bars, smoke K2, but I exercised a lot, and it never really, it never really turned to God. Just kind of did what I did. I would run the gambling for the unit. I'd run the boards for all the games. I'd run the parlays. So that would bring in a good amount of money, a real good amount of money, enough for, like, if no one sent me money, I'd be straight, because I'd make all this money off of gambling and stuff like that. So it got to that point for me. The drugs, they were just there. I'd take them. I was always a drug addict. I had a few real good close homeboys. It never got to that point where I needed to actually in prison, get down like that to the what I had prepared myself for, right? And so that's how I got to that part, to kind of answer that second one, because I know I kind of skipped over your second point. And for the third point, I just did drugs, and that's what it was. There were still fights. People would take bars. You'd see people, because of the drugs, be able to go toe-to-toe, holding each other's heads, just going at it and just chilling because of the drugs, and just,
So
beating each other up. Did
you ever see death through violence or through drugs or suicides when you were in there?
No, not death. They'd bash people's heads in. They'd have to air flight to hospitals. I don't know if that's considered death. You see people. Well, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On mine,
I'm like, oh, why'd you say that? But I started freaking out.
I see dead bodies.
I see them now. They're here.
Help him. Why did I help him?
I did time on max units, and I've seen death on every scale, from suicide to homicide to overdose. I'm still on parole, and I openly said a lot of the homicides that happen in prison is coming from the Texas the guards themselves, and it's covered up. I've never seen it on a newspaper or headline, and
which is why I was saying, like,
I don't see any news.
I think 143 seems a little low.
And I hate to, really, there's no fear in God. So the Texas prison system is a real corrupt system in the state of Texas, and one day will be exposed.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's set up to keep you in prison, not to let you out.
They hide everything. You got to imagine a lot of these prisons in Texas. It used to be at one point before COVID, there was like 120-something prisons in Texas. And a lot of them are owned by judges and named after politicians. So, of course, they're going to cover each other's back. But I've had personal friends that have been killed by officers in there. They put you in handcuffs. They take you to the back where there's no cameras. And one day, the next day, they're saying that he hung himself. But we knew this guy. He was coming home in 3 months. He didn't hang himself. So that happens. I've seen overdoses it's actually crazy talking about it, because I just told my wife's son a few weeks or a month or so, like, you'd be surprised how many dead bodies I've seen in prison. And
they're just trying to brush his teeth. He's like, Jonathan, man, every morning. Is at the breakfast table, bro?
I'm just getting ready for church, bro. For real.
We're at dinner or something. So that's something I got to realize in this newer generation. It's a blessing that they're sheltered to the point that they are. And it amazes me, because I say stuff like this, and he just looks at me like, I'm married to his mom.
He's like, dang.
No, but yeah, I've seen this one guy, and he was a homosexual. I used to cut his hair, and he would go to visit, and his daughter didn't know he was a homosexual in prison. He would play in 2 lives, so she would bring him drugs every weekend. Well, one weekend he couldn't throw up the balloons, and he couldn't pass them, on the toilet. and this dude's stomach swelled up to the size of a beach ball. I didn't know your skin could stretch that far. He was a skinny person, you know. And I remember them bringing him out the cell, and they just treated him like another, inmate, no remorse. They didn't cover him up. They brought him in front of everybody. His stomach swelled up, and his skin color changed. And I've seen people when they hang themselves, their face swells up. These are real vivid details, So when you hang yourself, all your eyeballs are gonna bust, all your vessels are gonna bust. So they bring these dudes who just hung themselves out, and their tongues are swollen out their mouth, and their eyes are bleeding, and it's horrible scenes that you see. So there's this gang in prison, and if there's any brothers out there listening in different states, and it's not that I'm bashing y'all, or we all come from the same background, but these they're called tango blast, and they have this thing called a heart check. So you come into prison, the system, and you get the homeboys that come and they want to give you a heart check, which means they're gonna put like 3 or 4 guys on you and beat you up. To me, I never understood that, because there's a saying like a cat will scratch and fight back if it's pushed to a corner. So you get out there, you get to this prison yard, and you're waiting for these homeboys to come and beat you up to see if you got any heart. A lot of times these dudes take it too far, and they bust these dudes' heads open to the point where they're dead, and so they get organized crime charges in prison. And you see that more times than any is with these so-called heart checks. These dudes kill each other, and they're supposed to be each other's homeboys.
So back to the first question about how hard is it to serve God in prison. So at that point you said 3 years where you were serving God. So how do you stay away from all that?
There's no staying away from it, and I hate to say it, man, and I accept my brothers for who they are, but the reality is there's a lot of dudes in prison that will hide behind Christianity. They'll fake it until they get out.
Well, that's the jailhouse repentance, right?
Jailhouse repentance. And, it's because they're scared to get into the gangs. They're scared to get into fights, so they walk around with their Bibles and scriptures and everything. Well, with me, I did the same thing. I said that I'm going to take a stand. I'll preach to people, I'll minister, and read my Bible openly. But I still found myself in fights, because I remember praying to God one time. I was still in the process of the whole Odajon thing. And I remember telling God, I know you're going to get me out of this. This is already something that I'm involved in, and I'm willing to surrender. And this is that's why I ended up in G5, because he had to seclude me and mold me. But yeah, I've been in fights. Actually, the first week I made parole, I saw parole, I got into a fight. It's just, I don't know. I'm not glorifying that, So you still take stands for yourself as a man, as a godly man as well. We uphold ourselves to a certain standard. So in prison, it feels like, just because I'm a Christian, just because I read my Bible, I'm not going to let you come take anything from me. Or I'm not going to let you just walk over me. And maybe I'll be corrected by Pastor if he's listening, when he listens. But yeah, I still find myself fighting in there, man. And it's not something I see myself doing out here. There's no reason to fight. So I used to tell my homeboys, the one that was cutting hair yesterday, Mars. So he'd tell me, "What are you gonna do if somebody comes and pulls a gun on you, or threatens to fight you?" I tell him, "Bro, I'm a taxpayer, and I'm gonna call the cops." It's like there's no shame no more.
Yeah.
So, but while I was in prison, yes, it was tough. Still found myself in a few fights, and dudes are gonna make fun of you. It's.
Well, like we were talking about a while back, when you were telling me about when you were doing the Easter baskets, and you had one of your old cellmates or whatever that was kind of giving you a hard time about it, kind of making fun of you a little bit. And
oh yeah,
we were talking about how, dude, it's like you have more to lose, man. You got a family, you got a baby on the way. It's like you're not gonna, act up the way you did before. You know what I mean? Like you're on this trajectory up. You're not staying the same like a lot of these guys who get out and they're still in the same life, still doing the same nonsense. You know what I mean? Do you have anything?
No, that's it.
So, you have anything to say about serving God in prison?
For me, I just drowned everything out. I learned how to be really good at that. Whenever I would read my Bible, instead of listening to the dominoes and the slamming on the cards, and just like, hey, tell Pookie to come over here, tell Pookie to come down here and get him some lessons, man, and stuff like that. I just drowned it all out. If I wanted to read my Bible, I read my Bible, and I just like,
ignore everything.
man, God, if you're really serious about it, like I was really serious about it, because I would pray and I would ask God. I'd be like, man, I want this knowledge, and it says it in the Word. If you want knowledge, ask for it. So I prayed and I asked for that. So I would read my Bible, and God blessed me with some good mentors while I was in prison. And I would, hang out with them, and they weren't my pastor. I thank God for my pastor. God led me to him for a reason. And man, shout out to Pastor Luis. I love you. But I would, they would tell me, be like, hey man, you shouldn't be cussing like that, because you read your Bible. We have a Bible study. You go to church, and you're getting this knowledge, but your mouth is really dirty, man. Hey man, you shouldn't be looking at them kill shots.
What are kill shots, Casey?
I was like,
That
he's
is-
gonna elaborate
What
on
are
that.
kill
That
shots, bro?
That's funny, man.
What
I
is
was gonna
that?
explain that. What is this?
That's
man?
perversion, Kill shots it's perversion. That's what it
Pornography.
is. It's pornography,
Why kill shot?
I mean, and they're telling me all this, and I didn't have any shame, so I would be like, okay, I'll try to clean up my mouth, okay, I'll try to step my game up, Trying to live for God in prison, the only thing that really was bad on me was the temptations. I didn't have any guidance. I didn't have correct guidance, I should
That
say.
headship.
Yes, I didn't have a headship. I was just going up. There would probably be like a group of 8 of us, that were doing a Bible study and going to church faithfully and stuff, but maybe only one of us was real. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't.
And real quick, comment on that, because, like I said, I didn't find God, but I do think about this and I find it's kind of weird. I don't know where it comes from. Didn't find God. I wouldn't read my Bible, really. I mean, I think I had a Bible. I know in the past I'd use my Bible to our pages to snort like coke or meth or stuff like that, and I'd use my Bible in that way. But it was in prison where almost like King Saul, where like a tormenting spirit, my anxiety would come up, and I would get these weird anxiety panic attacks. But it was never when nothing was going on or anything was popping off or anything like that. But it would be like in the quiet times when I was alone, if you can call it alone. But when it was quiet, laying down, I would get these panic attacks. Or if I was outside on the rec yard somewhere, like, it was nighttime, they would come randomly, and the only thing that would make them cease would be reading my Bible. And I don't remember what made that happen or where that came from, but I remember the panic attacks would come, and when I would read my Bible, they'd go away. I didn't find God. I don't even remember why I had that Bible. I think it was for the phone numbers and all that, because you can write all your information. They won't take your Bible. And when I would read the Bible, the panic attacks would go away. And I remember that. And the same thing, that's when the shadows stopped messing with me, because I wasn't smoking meth no more. And so it wasn't like tweaking out no more, but the shadows continued to torment me long into prison. And it was, I would even say it praying, but like taking dominion over them, were in prison where that kind of got fixed. And so it wasn't necessarily finding God, but God was involved. So I don't know if it was like I really that I found God, or it was just coming to, or if he was always there or what. But I remember, when I needed it, I could, tap on that Bible and chill out.
People will respect that though. Like if they see,
Demons respect it, bro.
if they, yeah, that is true. Yeah. That's true. No, people will respect it. Like if you're actually for real about
You're
it.
genuine.
If you're genuine about it, people will respect it.
But they will gonna want to see it. So there's
Yeah.
no like
Yeah.
being wishy-washy.
So if
That
you-
lukewarm that they talk about, spit you out of
Yeah.
your mouth. They don't want to see you gambling. They don't want to see if you're saying you're
Yeah.
living one way, you better live that way.
So if you end up slipping, they're gonna be like, "Hey man, I thought you was blue, 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 blue."
out here, we, you know, Christians could hide. They could go to church and, you know, live a different life. In prison, everything's revealed. Doesn't matter what. It's crazy because in Texas, it doesn't matter what unit you land on, somebody's gonna know you. So your rap sheet follows you, whether you're a Christian or you're a thief, you know, a gangster. It's gonna follow you. What he's saying is like, people will notice if you're real or not.
Well, that's Pastor Luis always tells the stories of these guys that come in, the parolees that are Mexican mafia, and they're they're saying that they're serving God, and that the gang is like, all right, well, we need to see it.
We're gonna watch
And
it.
they've even come to check up on them at church and like, hey, is this dude here? You know what I mean? And like, it's like, yeah, they're really checking on you. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, so with them being the whole blood in, blood out thing, they're even more big. Even with the old homes, you know, they won't beat you up, you know, when you're saying that you're gonna step aside to be with God, but they are gonna watch you. So you can't be that Christian homeboy that you know, still selling dope and, you know, they're gonna watch everything. So
That's kind of crazy that you know, even from the sinner perspective that they're living, like they're holding, you know, they have
hold you
holding these
accountable.
people accountable, and they even know like, hey, this is not how you should be acting as a Christian. You know what I mean? It's like they even recognize and know what a Christian is supposed to be acting like.
so
Crazy, right?
one time I had got to this new unit because I came out of G5. Well, people start showing up who knew me from my last unit. They're like, hey, that's, you know, so-and-so, and I'm going to come send you something. So one dude comes one time, and he brings me so in there they got this paper K2, which is synthetic marijuana. He brings me a whole paper like the ones you have right there. I'm like, nah, bro, I can't. So we sit down and talk. He's serving a life sentence, and he's like, man, what you're doing is harder than what we do out here with this homeboy stuff and everything. So, you know, they do honor and recognize it, but they fail to recognize that it's for them too.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay, so the next topic I want to talk about are spiritual curses. I know you guys have had family in prisons. You mentioned a grandfather. You mentioned your grandmother. I'm sure you guys probably have more than that. I know you've mentioned your mom has had her issues. I don't know if she's ever in prison or not, but
Yeah, she's been in prison.
so let's just talk a little bit about spiritual curses. Talk about, you know, who you've had in the system, the effect it had on you. You know, we can talk a little bit about what getting locked up does to the family, to the kids. If any of you have a father or know somebody that was affected from somebody that had a father in prison, like having that absent father in there. And then we talk about, you know, like any other spiritual curse on breaking it. You know what I mean?
I have a question for Casey and Jesse. It's on the note of spiritual curses, but for me, and I've noticed in other people's lives in prison, for some reason, there's a certain time of year where everything falls apart. And with me, it was November. Every November, everything would fall apart. I could never get past that November. And it went on for years until I finally surrendered to God. So, and you see, I've talked to multiple people, so I'm not sure if y'all experienced something like that where a certain time period or something happened throughout the year that it was repetitive.
For me, it was just I brought bad on myself any time of day, whenever it was. So I was pretty much the cause of my own destruction.
So along what you're saying, so, you know, the spiritual curse on my side, it doesn't have to do with like with you guys with incarceration and that kind of stuff. But the spiritual curse on my side are unnatural deaths. There's been lots of deaths, you know, from drugs, from alcohol, from just, you know, cars falling on people mysteriously. You know what I mean? Like, there's throughout my whole family has been just lots of death, unnatural ways, right? But like what you're talking about is, yeah, it's for us, it's September and April. Those 2 months, there's, you know, just lots of death in those 2 months for some reason. You know what I mean? And the thing too that I always find weird is those 2 months correlate birth and deaths. So people born and died in those months, both April, September, for some reason. But you know,
That's interesting.
you know, there's spiritual. I mean, you know, people don't realize the aspects of the spiritual and what it plays, right? You know, that people kind of go through life and with all kinds of things, with drugs, with alcohol, it's always a crutch of, oh, it's in my DNA, it's in my my family history or whatever. You know what I mean? With incarceration, you know, a lot of it is blamed on the environment, on where they live or upbringing and that kind of stuff. But a lot of it is spiritual, right? Something that along the lines, you know, just hasn't been broken. You know what I mean? And you just kind of fall into line with it. You know what I mean? Until you do make that stand. Like for us, you know, my dad really made that stand with my family for the drugs and alcohol of being, he's like, no, my family's not going to be around that. My kids aren't going to grow up to see that, and actively removing us from that element. And obviously, you know, he was a Christian and stuff too. So, you know, his praying and stuff like that is what helped. And then I furthered that with, you know, trying to do that with my kids and whatnot and stuff like that. But for you guys, did you guys ever notice any of that with your lives, or not until you kind of came into being a Christian, or what kind of experience you guys got?
I don't notice any time periods or anything like that, like September or November or anything.
Well, not
like that. I don't
necessarily
notice anything.
time periods, but just, did you notice that there was a spiritual curse on your family?
Yeah, and
That is,
maybe this will help them think of something. But like how you said, environment, mine was kind of interesting because we grew up traveling around the world, so I had no relation with the family that you would say the curse came down from. So it wasn't even so much the environment or the involvement with that said family, you know, because it came to the point where it was, you know, pretty obvious the life I was going to live and the kind of kid I was going to be. And, you know, they would kind of freak out like, man, you're just like, you know, this family member. You're just like that family member. And they're like, you've never even met them, you know. But like, oh, man, you're just like them. If you only knew, like, that's crazy. Like, you know, we took you out of it because you said that they took you out of it. So, like, I wasn't even there. You know, I was taken out of it. But it just showed the spiritual side of it. It's still.
how strong it was on you.
Yeah. All my mom's side of the family, her uncles, grandpas, my grandpa, her dad, they all went to prison for murder, man. They were all Mexican mafia. And though she kept me away from these people, I would be 12, 13 years old saying, when I go to prison, you know. And I remember watching, you know, Blood In, Blood Out, American Me, and just kind of idolizing that, you know, when I go to prison type of mentality. So I can remember at a young age, being 13 years old, 12 years old, saying, when I go to prison.
You're going to be metal.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the best. I'm gonna be the soup master.
So for you, Jesse, you mentioned your grandma. Who else in your family? Just everybody, or?
Well, you can mostly see it in my grandma, but all the men are dead in the family. So you see that Diego being my cousin. When you look back, a lot of the men, the older guys, and you know, add fatherlessness and abandonment to that. And there's really no men. It's a bunch of women that have been left alive, and if they themselves were not addicts. But that's another one that you know, Diego being my cousin, we saw that, and we still see the addiction in, you know, certain family members. You know who's got it and who doesn't. For whatever reason, I turned it up a notch, but yeah, that's another one, and I forgot the other part you had asked about that.
Did you recognize that it was a spiritual thing before you got saved or after? I mean, you mentioned that, you know, they threw it out there like, hey, dude, you're not even around that family and you're still like them. But did you recognize your understanding of a spiritual curse?
Yes and no, not so much spiritual, but the way Mexicans put it, like it's in the blood. You know what I mean? Like it's in the blood. It runs through the blood. It's in your veins. You know what I mean? This name's in your veins.
That's the excuse everybody always uses.
Yeah, it's in your blood.
I think what's bad with the, you know, it may be in all cultures, but like, you know, you hear like, you're just gonna be like your grandpa, you know. Well, what did my grandpa do? He served 20 years, you know. So, you know, you're being told you're gonna be like him. I didn't understand spiritual curses. I used to hear the term. Never understood it until I started studying, and I realized that this thing will keep going on for years, 40 years at a time, until somebody finally steps aside and turns it around. I see it in all my cousins are locked up right now to this day. My dad's locked up. I just got a phone call. He'll be calling me Monday. You know, he gets his free phone call Monday.
Mm.
So he's still locked up.
So what is there anything that you're actively thinking about doing to break that for your son, for, you know, any future kids, for Posey, I guess you can get locked up, but for, you know what I mean? Like, obviously, you know, praying and stuff like that, but is there anything in your mind that you're already set, like, oh, I'm going to do this differently?
Speak life.
Big
I
life.
gotta bind
exactly.
those words, Daniel.
Yeah, I know my mom.
Rebuke you.
I'm not saying she's
Blessing for
going to.
Posey.
I'm just,
How dare you drag her into this?
I'm just saying 7% of prison population are women. I'm just saying.
What Casey just said right now, speak life. My mom's gonna listen to this. There's no shame, you know. But my mom had a bad mouth when it came to talking about you ain't nothing, you ain't gonna be nothing, you know. She claims she doesn't remember none of this, you know. So, you know, speaking life is big on our generations. I'm already talking to my son in his stomach, telling him he better not be a crybaby. I'm speaking life on him.
That's what Marty always does too. I should always tell Posey.
Okay, so then let's go ahead and just move on to restoration after prison. So let's talk a little bit about you guys individually, your lives. Real quickly, just go into getting into church, how you got into church, you know, your pursuit of getting closer to God, but also kind of sum up where you're at in life right now. So, you know, your jobs, you guys are all right now obviously blessed from where you guys came from, you know what I mean? Business owners, you're, you know, in your job of electricians, you know what I mean? You're excelling and stuff like that. Your family life, relationships, and your marriages, you know, how those are doing better. If there's anything that you're, you know, pursuing to staying out of trouble and drama.
I think to tie it in real good with what he last said and going into this point with the speaking life and restoration. I was telling I believe Jonathan, I might have told both of them just the other day or recently. I was telling him I wish I had spoke more life, more benevolent things when I was in there, because speaking on restoration, the words that I spoke while I was locked up came to pass when I got out. So I didn't find God in there, right? I was hoping to come back and be better. I'm gonna get it this time. And so my words were, you know, I'm gonna get you know, this house, I'm gonna prostitute women, you know, I'm gonna have girls that live together, I'm gonna do drugs, you know what I mean, I'm gonna do all these things. And it came to pass, you know what I mean, my words became
Words have power.
you know, the destiny, and too bad it wasn't, you know, words of life and benevolence. Thank God, you know, God got involved. But as far as restoration goes, you know, it's never too early to start speaking like that. You know, the instant things change, just everything needs to change, because, you know, you never know, you know what the Bible says, your words and your thoughts become your words, your actions, your behaviors, and then your destiny. You reap what you sow is how they put it. But
And so just talk a little bit about where you're at right now in your life.
and so, yeah,
What God has done for
then
you.
God got involved, right? So that then God gets involved. I get out, and then God gets involved. And so thank God for that. I ended up in that position, and everything fell apart like it always does, because you're not smarter, you're not better. You know what I mean? You're going to get caught like everybody else. And things are falling apart. And I'm getting to that point, you know, and I have that God moment, that crying out, and he gets involved. He saves me from that, and everything starts to fall in place. Everything begins to be restored. I'm glad God got involved, because I didn't have that fulfillment of the county, what I went into prison hoping to do. I didn't have that fulfillment, and so I was already prepared. I was thinking I'm gonna go back, and you know, the solution to that was like how Jonathan said. I was like, but this time I gotta go G4. Mm-hmm. You know, this time I gotta get the red jumpsuit if I want to make it to those prisons. You know what I mean? And I would draw the patterns for the tattoo gun, stuff like that, but it just wasn't. It wasn't as intense there, so I didn't really feel the need to even get involved, and so I felt like that went unfulfilled. And I was like, you know, next time, you know, so it was already beginning. Well, you know, when I go back to prison, like this time, you know, I know what I got to do. I know what I got to do, and I'm gonna be ready for it. So God got involved, and thank God that never came to pass. But He got involved, and everything just was restored. I mean, everything was just improved 100%. I mean, the man I was then, if you want to say man, right? Because it's 21, got locked up 17, started drinking drugs early age. So development, you know, I still felt, even though from the outside it may have not seemed like it, but 22, I don't know if y'all consider that a kid, but inside, deep down inside, I still felt like a kid, like a teenager. I still felt like there was this childish, you know, I didn't feel, you know, grown really. God got involved and he changed that. He took that. He's helped me to mature. Like you said, you know, the electrician in school, you know what I mean? It didn't even matter what it was. I just wanted to be better and to do better. Once God got involved, the ambition, the same drive was there, right? So the same ambition, the same drive for the streets and for drugs and for prison, right? Wanting to get, you know, the rank and all that stuff. The drive was still in there. It was just shaped and formed in a different way, right? So God put that in us, and he shaped us. He formed us in our mother's womb. So that drive's in there. But instead of being used for evil, he's now, you know, turning it, and he's taking the will, and he's using it for his kingdom. And so I hope to, you know, fulfill everything that I wanted to fulfill in prison, but now in the kingdom of God. You know what I mean?
So real quick, I just want to ask you one now that you're talking. So, you know, I don't like to, you know, say that we live. I don't like to, you know, say, you know, living with a life full of regret is good or not. But it is interesting. Like I always sometimes will play through like what ifs, right? So for you, somebody that, you know, excelling.
You know what I say about what ifs?
What ifs? What do you say?
What if my aunt had balls? She'd be my uncle.
She could. She could nowadays.
No, I'm sorry. I wanted to throw that in there. I saw the opportunity. I was like, oh, he said, what if? I was like, that was my moment. What if mine had balls? All right, go ahead.
It'd be 2022, 23. So no, like, have you ever thought, because you're excelling in your program now, you know, you're top of your class. You mentioned that when you got your GED in prison, you're a valedictorian, right? And you just kind of mentioned, right? Like if you would have focused all your efforts in your youth in positive instead of negative, do you ever think like where you might be at this point? How your life would have been different?
Well, and
not saying that it would be for the better,
yeah,
because you might not be serving God if you went that route. You know what I mean?
this might be simplifying it too much, but I know, like, so me and Madi, you know, we got married. I love the Avengers. Captain America is my favorite superhero, always has been. And so I don't know if this is a good analogy, but she was surprised by that, right? Because I get all pumped up, and I was like, oh, Captain America, man, he's righteous and this and all this stuff. And she was thrown back, and she was like, but you would seem more like a Tony Stark, you know, like an egotistical playboy millionaire. Like, so I think what would have been achieved would have been the Tony Stark, you know, but I think now I get to really live the Captain America, you know, the righteous, the man to fall on the grenade, the man to live and uphold, you know, what is holy and what is right. And he's the only one that could pick up Thor's hammer, so I'll take that. You know what I mean? I love Captain America.
Well, I mean, it's your life experiences is what shaped you into who you are today. Like, yeah, you could have been, you know, a God-hating atheist working in whatever, but you're top of your class in business. You know what I mean? So, you know, God obviously brought you this path, and you went through what you did for a reason. But, anyways,
I hope, does that answer it? I don't like what ifs. That's pretty much the answer. I don't think on it. I don't pay no mind to it. It's dead. It's dead and gone, dead weight. But what if?
What if she has balls? Right?
It'd be part 2.
What is a female?
What is a woman?
What is a woman? Casey saw one in prison.
Threw me off.
I didn't know they had girls in here.
You ain't gotta go to prison. Go to Wayback Burger, man.
Man.
Yeah, we went to Wayback Burger. There's a big one there.
Yeah, that's crazy.
All right, so Casey, let's talk a little bit about your restoration, or where you're at in life right now, what God has done.
What got me into church was Pastor Luis. Shout out Pastor Luis again. I love you. I was at the orientation at parole, and I had prayed prior to that, like, God, put me in a church where you want me at. And I just see this big old dude in there just selling Jesus, and I'm like, man, I need some of that. So I chase him down. I'm like, hey, man, I need to go to church, and that's how I got into the church. And I've been there for 3 years now. Is it 3 years, something like that? Going on 4?
Years?
Yeah,
4 years?
probably is 4. Dang, I'm trying to shoot. I'm trying to shine myself
Don't
a
compare it to your
year.
marriage. You get it wrong.
Yeah,
I'm already going on a year, so you probably going on 4.
yeah, so, yeah. Probably about
You were there
4
before me. I
years.
was nah, because if I'm going on 5, you were there before me.
Yeah, but
Unless you count your
I
first year.
I
He was
left.
there and then he went back in.
I had to
Okay,
go.
okay.
I had to go back. But
So where are you at now in your life? You're a business
now
owner.
Married. Man, God has moved. And pastor's always on me. He's like, hey man, you need to focus on the good instead of focusing on the bad. And he's always telling me that. He's like, your problem is faith. And I'm not scared to say it. I mean, and it's true. It's true. And when I pray, I'm like, I'm just full of gratitude whenever pastor tells me stuff like that. And then I go to pray and I'm like, God, I'm so sorry, for taking all that you've done for granted. And I rebuke it whenever I start to think of things like that. And now I have a beautiful wife. She loves me. She gets on my nerves. Hey, Isis. I love you. But we get on each other's nerves, but we love each other. And man, it's a beautiful feeling to wake up next to her, because I wasn't always like that. I would wake up next to a girl and I'd be like, hey, you need to go. I'm surprised you're still here. But I mean, God delivered me from that. I ain't like that no more, and I don't have to be. I got a comfortable bed. I don't have to sleep on a freaking lumped up mat that's freaking got lumps all over everywhere. I got a pillow, an actual pillow. I ain't got a makeshift pillow that's made out of this and that and that and this. I got a comforter that's warm. I got an apartment it stays pretty chill in there because it gets 100 degrees out here. It gets hot. So I'm a business owner. Thank you, because you've been a blessing to me and my business. I'm not always busy, but my bills are paid.
Yep.
And I got food in the refrigerator. And I got money to put gas in my truck. So I'm not wealthy, but I got everything I need. And it's all because of God. And I will admit that like pastor checks me on it too. Like, I take it for granted because coming from my background, I'm greedy. I want more. And it's in the Old Testament as well. And I have to keep myself in check with that too, and be just content, like Paul said. Be content with what you have and what you are. So
I was gonna be all like, "No, let's contend for wealth." You're like, "I'm greedy. I'm working on that." I'm like, "Oh, never mind." I was like, "We're gonna pray for wealth right now. We're gonna believe God, bro."
I can't, because for me, I just want more. So I gotta, and I do when I pray. I ask God. I'm like, hey, just keep me humble. I'm like, just keep me humble. I'm cool with my wife loving me for me. I'm cool with having some food and not just having pockets full of money everywhere and freaking stashes here and there and stuff like that. So
Yeah, God will always provide.
amen.
Yeah. So Jonathan, you only been out. What is
9
it,
months and
7?
2 days.
9 months. Okay, I counted down the days.
Oh yeah, it's just because
You
it's
got a lot
27.
done in 9 months, bro.
Yeah.
Okay, so being out only 9 months, and you really came into church, right after your monitor came off. You were right there in church. Naomi coming,
The first day.
before.
It was December 27th. They took the monitor off. It was a Wednesday. I went straight to church.
Yeah. So we've seen what God has done in your life just in these 9 months, and restoring you after prison. You know what I mean? So just kind of talk about that a little bit.
So I might go a little bit more in depth in my restoration because it's it's more broad.
Yeah, just give me the Cliff Notes version.
Okay, so just standing here today, the character, attitude, personality that I have, that in itself is a restoration because I'm just a humble, happy person now as opposed to who I used to be. I could honestly say that my church family, y'all know me better than my real family right now. So since the time I would come home, it's like I tell the other parolees who come through, is just step right into it, man. Don't miss the beat. Just get right into it. So that's how it was. So how it works with the parole ministry, I got out on a Wednesday. The very next day I had to go to orientation. So I came home from prison already praying about a church. And the church that my wife was going to, they heard I was coming home. Being a felon, they put up the guards and really didn't want me there, in so many words. So I see Pastor Luis come in. Of course, he was the last one to come in. And before him, it was just like these dudes were talking nonsense. It wasn't really like no spirit in it. So I hear Pastor Luis, and I'm feeling like he's talking to me. And I go home. I sit down in my garage, and I'm really contemplating a lot of things at this point. And it's only my second day out of prison. So I'm looking at the card he gave me, and for some reason I blew past the address for about 10, 15 minutes. I'm sitting there debating, should I call him? And I look at the address, and I type it into the Google Maps, and it says 6 minutes away. I'm like, okay, well, maybe if that's not enough, then let me give him a call. So it was real humbling, man. He just accepted us with arms open. Y'all came to the house with pizza. Y'all didn't know me. Y'all came into my home and just really welcomed us. My wife, I was on the monitor. Y'all invited my wife over to the Thanksgiving fellowship. She brought me home a plate, So all these things, it was just real warm. And, so I continued to push to get into church. I got my monitor off. In 60 days, that's all God, because a lot of dudes would do more than 90 days, up to 180. And since then, I came home, got a job. First 15 days out of prison, I got a job. And I worked there about 2.5 months, and I quit. I tell Daniel, I think I'm about to quit my job, bro. So he really didn't know me at the time. So, I don't know what he was thinking. So I quit my job, and I just put all my faith in God and said, look, God.
Martinez?
Daniel Martinez he convinced me to quit my job.
He said, quit your job, bro. You don't even need it.
So, I quit my job. I had a few checks put away, and I got into the entrepreneurship thing, and I sold some Easter stuff and, toys and things. At the same time, I'm cutting hair because it's always been a thing for me. Shout out Cuts for Change. We had a good little event yesterday.
I was like, this is my barber too. Shout out Jonathan.
So
Y'all need a
it's
haircut.
all of our barbers.
Jonathan.
Cold with them
Literally
clippers.
everyone in here, all 5 of us.
Yeah, every one of us faded up.
Yeah.
Except for me, I'm not faded.
Except for Daniel. I messed his haircut the last time. No, but God's just moving. So I quit my job. I got into the entrepreneurship thing, and made an X amount of money, which was beyond what I imagined. And I started praying about a truck. I really, really prayed about a truck, and looking around, I can't afford the trucks that I see. So then I get a call from my tia, my aunt, and she's like, "Hey man, I can sell you a truck. Just give me $2,000 for it." So I'm like, "All right." So me and my brother Alberto, great blessing to me as well. We go check out the truck, and he's just like, "Man, this is a good truck." So we got it running, good truck. And then I got into the pressure washing business, and although it's still slow and I'm getting some footing under me, God's still providing when it's necessary and when the time comes. I got a baby on the way. Been 9 months out, and she's about 8 months pregnant, so she's about to pop already. And I'm in barber college. I'm going to school to get my barber license. It's just, in the amount of time that I have been out, is sometimes I feel like I'm not doing nothing. I feel like I'm stagnant. I'm slow into progressing. Then I just got to humble myself, slow down, and look at 9 months, 2 days ago, you're sitting in prison with nothing.
And also, I always try to remind you that you got to keep looking at the bigger picture. You got to be the bigger picture is Cuts for Change.
Yeah.
You got to be and so. The barber schooling is a slow, monotonous thing, but it's like, stay faithful, man. You'll get through it, and then that's when you're going to see God really move and bless you in this Cuts for Change thing. You know what I mean? So, you guys are all, being the outside observer these last 4 years, for you two, especially you, because you came in, we came in right after you did. And
So you knew how long I'd been here. Why didn't you say something?
I did. I said 4 years.
Oh, okay.
But
What is 4?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's 4 years for us in now in August. And you were 4 years right before.
Oh, okay. I did have it right then. Never mind, guys. I had the right anniversary. She said she was
Wadi's
saying
wrong.
hi.
Wadi's
No, she was
wrong.
saying hi. I thought she said it's
Oh.
5 years. She was saying hi.
Sure.
Hi, baby. Love you.
So yeah, so I we saw you when you were, kind of at your worst coming into the church, and so yeah.
Gee, guy, thanks.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, to see where you guys are at now. You know what I mean? Like, you guys.
He look good now, though. Check him out.
Yeah, we've seen this progression of your faith.
It's
and
your size. Take it.
and what God has done for you guys. So, that's pretty exciting stuff. So, the last thing I kind of want to go into, the second to last thing I want to go into is prison reform. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on, what do you think that needs to happen in order to fix the prison system and make it more successful? Because obviously it really doesn't work. I'm going to get into some stats here. So the worldly point of view, of prison reform is not looking at the underlying problems and addressing those. It's it's looking at the situation now. So it's community service for the people in there. It's reduced sentences. It's all this. It's not addressing the people making the decisions when they're younger, right? It's dealing with it now, which I don't think that's the way to solve it, right? The spiritual common sense viewpoint is the start of the problem. So around 60% of those that are incarcerated, they come from fatherless homes. That's obviously probably one of the biggest issues, right? Is fathers aren't being fathers nowadays. So we all know, I mean, that's a recurring theme with our guests in the podcast, right? Is 90% of the guests, their fathers were absent. And we look what happens in their lives: drugs, sex, sexual abuse, being abused physically, you know what I mean? That goes rampant because a big part of it is because the fathers aren't around doing what they're supposed to. The median annual income of incarcerated people before incarceration was only $19,000, which is 41% less than non-incarcerated people at similar age. So a lot of people going into prison are low income, right? So part of it is the environment, right? You have a lot of people with certain mentalities living in certain situations that their way of life is selling drugs. It's their way of life is drugs, violence, and everything that you experience in prison, right? When we look at recidivism rates, which for those watching that don't know what recidivism is, it's the rate at which former inmates reoffend and return to prison. So Casey, you can speak on that. You've gone back, 2 times after your first time. So a study done over 10 years of prisoners released in 2008. So they followed prisoners. It was, it was 409,000 prisoners is what they looked at from 24 states, which was the bulk of the prisons were in these 24 states. So they followed them from 2008 to 2018. And in this report, 66% released were arrested within 3 years. 82% were arrested within 10 years, at least once. That's a huge number. 82% are getting arrested again. 90% of prisoners released 24 or younger, which you would fall in this category, Jesse. So 90% of those were arrested within 10 years. That's a lot. You know what I mean? That's crazy. Within that 10-year period, 2.2 million arrests for those 409,000 people. So, there's multiple people having multiple cases and stuff brought about them. You know what I mean? So I just want to kind of get your guys' thoughts on what we can do. I think it's a bigger problem than just, fixing the prison system. I think it goes back into the school system. It goes back into a spiritual, it's a spiritual battle. It goes back into parenting. It really starts when the kids are young to really kind of reduce, the prison population. So, I mean, that's obviously a bigger, larger problem, which is kind of the goal of, pastor's ministry with the parolees and trying to get into people's lives, as Christians witnessing to people is like, hey, change your life now as a young kid, as, parents raising your kids so that you can, prevent all these problems later on that you guys have gone through and experienced, right? But also, about recidivism, how do we help prevent that? Maybe there's not a lot we can do individually, but
my opinion is meet them at the exit and close the front door, man. So that's I like what Pastor does with the parole ministry and with the Cuts for Change. My overall goal is to catch them when they're young. Throughout my juvenile experiences, everybody that I did time with in juvenile I ran into in prison. So obviously the juvenile system's not working because they're preparing us to go to prison. And somebody just asked me yesterday, I was cutting hair, and they're like, oh, I heard they give y'all trades. So I'm a certified carpenter by the state of Texas. But one of my tests was to read a measuring tape. Never got no hands-on experience. The bulk of my certificate is videos. I can't show up to a job site and tell them I'm a carpenter because I don't know how to do anything.
So they're like fake certifications.
They're real certificates. I'm certified through the state.
They're real, but they're fake for their numbers to be like, look, this is our program.
That's what we're doing for these inmates.
But you don't have no experience with it.
So, as far as the inside operations, man, has to be torn down by God and rebuilt. But what we could do as a whole is what Pastor does, and like what I said, meet them at the front, close the front door, meet them at the exit, because this is the problem, is these children. So I had wrote this, speech for the Cuts for Change thing, and in it I had said that many of us are just following blindlessly as zombies, following the person in front of us, whether it be a friend, a rapper, a drug dealer, our dad. We just follow them where they go. So I believe the prison reform needs a lot more role models like ourselves.
Stop committing felonies.
Yeah. Turn around.
Misdemeanors are all right, though.
Stop breaking the law, period.
That's it, man.
I mean, with me being a returning inmate, if nothing changes, nothing changes. I mean, if you're going to go out there and do the same thing, you're going to get the same results. So if you don't want to go to jail no more, just
and that's what it boils down to, too.
Stop doing what you're doing. Do something different. Try Jesus.
That's obviously easier said than done.
Yeah, it is.
The problem that we see is people get out of prison and they go back into the life, back into the same environment, back around the same people. So going back into that, it's hard to not get caught up in the same lifestyle. You know what I mean?
Well, that's when it boils down. If you really want it,
yeah.
If you really want it, then you're going to do what you have to do to take it, because nobody's going to give it to you. You got to take it.
Right.
You got to cut people out of your life. You got to change your environment. If you know that your environment's going to lead you right back into prison, go somewhere else. If you can't go somewhere else, pray. Open your Bible. God will open a door. That's where faith comes in. That's what pastors always telling me. Hey, you have a faith problem, and I have to see it. I have to pray. And God reveals things to me like, hey, look at all this I've already done for you. All you needed to do was just have a relationship with me. Because I know it's hard for some people to leave a place that to leave somewhere where they know that they shouldn't be. But God will open a door somewhere along down the road. Just if you want it, take it.
Jesse, I know that you're a smart guy. I'm sure you've thought about prison reform. I'm sure you've thought about recidivism. What are your thoughts?
I don't think I got anything positive to say. I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but I think it's all going to burn, man. I think this world is going to burn. I think it's going to hell real soon. And I think these two guys are good examples of no matter where you're at, God can get a hold of your heart. I think all we can do is just try to save as many souls as we can. I mean, I don't know if you watch Ruby's conference sermon on the extraction.
Yeah.
I think we're just at that point, at this point of time. I think everything's too far gone. There's too many systems to try to fix. You know, you could be worried about the prison. There's education. There's politics, countries, certain religions. You know what I mean? I think this place is going to burn. It's going to burn real soon. I think we're at that last step. It's just extraction. I don't think there's hope, man. It's bad. It's real bad.
I think overall we're the spirit of reformation. Men like ourselves, you know, we're what it takes for reformation. You know, any type of reformation in community, in prison, at home. We're men like ourselves is what it takes.
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of people come into our, well, we have seen a lot of people come into our church, and you know, I'll try to talk to them. I'll tell them, be like, hey man, you're in a good place. You're in a good place for your life to change. So you need to stay. Just keep coming to church. That's all you need to do. If you need a ride, I'll come and get you. And they'll be like, yeah. Come and get me for church. And then, you know, whenever I'm riding with them and, you know, I'm just talking with them and they're telling me, be like, man, it's so hard. It's hard. It's hard to do all this. It's hard to do that. They want me to do this. They want me to do that. I ain't even got no car. I ain't got no money. They don't want me to go out here and sell dope, but I can't even get no job. Be like, look, I know it's hard. I've been in your situation. But if you want it, if you really want it, if you really want to stay out of prison, it starts with you. It really does. It really starts with you. Yeah, you're gonna be tempted to. I mean, I've even been through it. I've been tempted to go and get some pounds and go sell them, but I didn't do that because deep down I don't want to go back to prison. I don't want to do that. And if, just like I said, if nothing changes, nothing changes. If I do the same thing, I'm gonna go right back to prison. And then the next time, I'm not getting out. I'm gone for a long time. They're gonna hit me with triple digits, and they're probably gonna hit me with a habitual, and I don't want that. I got like 7 or 8 felonies, and I done lost count. It's one of them, and people don't care about that. They
Don't move to California, bro.
they want the
Don't go there.
they want the quick fix, you know. Nah, it's gonna take some work. Just don't be scared to put the work in.
It's always encouraging when Pastor Luis says, well, shoot, man, y'all are doing it. You, Jesse, and Casey, y'all are doing it. You know, there's no excuse for these other men. And it's not a sympathy thing. It's not that we don't feel bad for these guys. It's that we ourselves have made it, and we're making it. You know, so in Texas, before you come home, one of the statistics, it says that 1 in 3 people will come back within the first year. So I'm on the road to that first year, breaking that statistic along with my brothers here, you know. So it's all very possible. You know, just got to put the work in.
And I hated those statistics. I hate being a statistic. I hate them. Not the one. I mean, the ones that you gave, but before you gave them, I've always hated them. I've been aware of them. I hate them.
I just wish a lot of, I know I shouldn't be wishing things, but a lot of the guys that I would talk to, they would just listen, because our church would be so full. We would have so many people in our church. Some dudes, they went back to selling dope. Some dudes, they went back to smoking dope. Some dudes they're just talking about this and that. I still talk to some of them, but I'm like, hey, you need to come to church. So, like, there was one guy, he called me the other day. He was like, man, I need you to keep me in your prayers. I'm like, man, you need to come and pray yourself. And he's probably gonna see this. You know, I'm talking about you.
So this may be off topic from the Reformation thing, but me coming from a gang life past background type of thing, once you get a whole view of our fellowship and the mass of it, bro, we're part of a huge mob. Like, you know, it's people like somebody the other day street preaching was like, oh yeah, you just in that little small storefront. I said, man, we're just a little small storefront, part of a huge body, bro. So me coming from that gang banging background is like, I'm a part of something huge here, and it's bigger than myself, bigger than anything I've ever been a part of.
Okay, so then let's go into just lastly, words of advice for viewers. So ex-cons, just getting out, or young kids who are on the path to life in prison. Kind of words of advice. You guys kind of mentioned it just now, but just kind of opening it up for any last words you guys want to get out there.
For the youngsters,
Just anything.
I got a little bit to say. For the youngsters that ain't got no dad specifically, God's there for you. All he wants you to do is just have a relationship with him. Start with that, and you'll unlock your full potential. For the recidivismists. Recidivismists. I don't know if that's a word. We're going to create it. You heard it first here today.
Webster.
Yeah. Just you put in so much work. You put in so much blood, sweat, and tears to get there. Why don't you do the same thing to stay out? It's going to hurt. You're going to have to do some work, but it's so much worth it. So try that. Open your Bible. Read it. It'll change your life. And for anybody else, Jesus is there. Come and check us out. 2025 Universal City Boulevard. And that's all I got.
Jesse, any closing thoughts? Anything you want to say before we close out?
Nah, I don't have no prison survival 101 or anything like that.
And not necessarily
I think
advice for prison, but just
I think the only advice, and it seems so simple, but I mean, just Jesus is the answer. There's too many situations, too many problems. A lot of people, you hear these lives that people live, you hear situations and experiences people gone through. I consider them valid. A lot of people would consider them valid, Those who are raped, drug fed, this, that, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, your life sucked. Life sucks. To an extent, it's valid, only to the point that, there's Jesus and that God can get involved and changed everything. So, I mean, I hate to keep it so simple, but it's so overwhelming for me. Then there's so many situations, so many circumstances. All I can say is, Jesus is the answer. Jesus, and come and see what that means, right? Because if you accept that, you accept Jesus, you come, then it opens up, right? Then the issues can be dealt with. Then there's more advice, then there's answers, and there's scriptures. But for now, all I can give you is Jesus, and you could pick it up, put it down. If you pick it up, you'll have some answers.
Me, for the younger crowd, I got a heart for the young people, the teenagers. Man, we just standing here today, all three of us, we weren't soft. We weren't scared. A lot of us have stories that, probably won't hear nowhere else. Don't be afraid to reach out for help and ask advice. Look for somebody who could guide you to the right things, Don't follow the crowd. Just be that one that steps aside and decides to do something different. For the older man that just keeps struggling with sin and being in and out of prison, bro, it's just time to wake up. That's all I can say about that. I hate to sound so cold when it comes to the older crowd of people coming in and out of prison, but it's time to wake up and realize that what you're doing is not working.
Good.
Goes with that.
Okay. Well, I think that was a good conversation. Thanks for joining us. For the audience, this these group of guys are proof in pastors' parole ministry, right? That it works. They're success stories. We've seen we're seeing what God is doing in their lives and what God's going to do in their lives. Pastor Luis mentioned it in Harvesters that, these are the three in line for discipleship, for getting launched out. These are our next three up.
Yeah.
In the order, you know what I mean? And they're going to be successful in all that they do, in the churches that they do. that they get launched out in. So, you know, I just want to kind of reiterate on what Pastor's goal in his ministry with this parolee thing is, that it works. You know what I mean? If people, like you guys mentioned, that if they listen, if they follow Pastor's headship, if they make those strides and sacrifices to follow Jesus and live right, I mean, God will move, and you know, these guys are the proof of that. So, anyways, I just want to thank you guys for coming on to talk about this. And,
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me back.
Shout out to Pastor Luis.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, all right, join us next time. Thanks.